I had been bullied by the school bully Leo on campus for a year. When my head was brutally pushed into the sewage pool, a look of pleasure turning into hideances would appear on his face. I don't know why he targeted me. Until one day, I saw a pocket watch that he cherished very much hanging around his neck. Inside it was a photo of my mother and him. Only then did I understand that he was my half-brother. He was also the son my mother had given up in great disappointment. He bullied me because he hated me. That night, when I got home, I didn't hide the bruises on my arms anymore. Under my mother's concerned questioning, I felt extremely aggrieved. Someone at school is bullying me. Mom, can you go and support me? Ding-ling-ling. As soon as the school bell rang, I couldn't help but tremble. The second the teacher left the classroom, I grabbed my school bag and ran out of the classroom. But I was still caught at the bottom of the teaching building. When several slovenly boys saw me, their eyes lit up. Brother Chang was right. This bitch is really going to run. I was shaking all over. Subconsciously, I turned my head to run. But as soon as I turned around, one person grabbed my collar forcefully. I smelled the faint smell of cigarettes on that person. It was Leo. He was the main perpetrator of the campus bullying I had suffered this year. It's over. Despair welled up in my heart. Soon, I was sandwiched and dragged by several people to the top floor. There were no classrooms on this floor. Only an abandoned toilet. Here was their law-free zone for bullying me. I had always been very puzzled. Why, among so many people, did Leo single me out? This middle school is divided into a junior high school department and a senior high school department. I just entered the first year of junior high school this year, while he was already in the second year of senior high school. I couldn't figure out why such an ordinary me could make him dislike me so much. Since the first day I entered the school, he had appeared in my sight. He just stood gloomily outside the classroom looking at me. His eyes were like a venomous snake eyeing a delicious prey. When bullying me, his face would even show a look of pleasure turning into hideances. I was pushed forcefully into the toilet. My body hit the shabby door, and my arms tingled. Didn't I tell you to come up here consciously after school? A boy raised his hand and slapped me on the head. Why the fuck are you running? Seeing that I didn't speak, he slapped me on the face again. These people were Leo's lackeys. They were also his henchmen. I clenched my fists and said with difficulty, "Today is my mother's birthday. I want to go back and celebrate her birthday." I was so frightened that I didn't notice that Leo, who had been expressionless and leaning against the wall, suddenly turned gloomy when he heard my words. He walked over quickly and pushed the boy standing in front of me forcefully. Leo was tall and strong. He grabbed my collar with one hand, making me have to stand on tiptoe to look at him. Leo gritted his teeth. "What the fuck are you?" The corners of his eyes trembled slightly, and his breath was unsteady, as if he was trying his best to endure something. Before I could figure out the reason for his sudden anger, I was dragged by him to the sink. The water in the sink was dirty and stinky. It hadn't been changed for hundreds of years. Almost without hesitation, Leo pushed my head into the sink. The feeling of suffocation came, and I struggled frantically. I had a feeling that Leo really seemed to want to kill me. Why on earth? I waved my hands continuously, trying to grab anything I could. During the struggle, my hand grabbed Leo's clothes. My fingers hooked the chain around his neck. "You bitch! Let go!" Someone came up and pulled my hand away. But along with it, the chain was also torn off by me. The sound of the metal falling to the ground rang out. Leo seemed to wake up from a dream, and suddenly let go. I fell exhausted lie on the ground, breathing in fresh air greedily. When I came to my senses, I found that Leo was uncharacteristically lying on the ground looking for something. He looked flustered, and his hands were even shaking a little. "Where is it? Where is it? Fuck. Look for it quickly," he roared. The stunned younger brothers around also quickly reacted, and began to squat on the ground to look for it. Looking at their abnormal appearance, I curled my fingers slightly and accidentally touched something. I turned my head to look. It was a delicate pocket watch that had been broken open. In the pocket watch was an old photo. It was a bit blurry. But my pupils still shrank because I recognized the person in it. My mother. Before I could take a closer look, the pocket watch was grabbed by Leo. He held the pocket watch carefully and wiped it again and again with his designer clothes. He regarded it as a precious treasure. It's broken. The pocket watch is broken, he murmured in a trance, and then turned around and walked out quickly. Brother Cheng. A boy asked in confusion, what about this bitch? Whatever. Leo was only thinking about the pocket watch. I'm going to repair the pocket watch. Don't contact me unless it's important. Thanks to that pocket watch, I could go home early for a rare time today. On the way home, the cold wind was blowing. The clothes on my body were already half wet, and now it felt even more bone-piercing. But I didn't feel much because my mind was in a mess right now. As long as I closed my eyes, I could think of the photo in the pocket watch. That gentle and beautiful woman was my mother. My mother when she was young. Then who was the little boy she was holding? Is it Leo? What is their relationship? I've always known that my mother was divorced once before and had a child. I am the child born after my mother remarried my father. My parents have never hidden this from me. But I can't connect Leo with my mother's previous child. But if Leo is really my half-brother, then all my long-standing questions can be answered. Why did he target me and bully me? Because he was abandoned by my mother. So he hates me. Why did he threaten me after bullying me and not let me tell my family? He also said that his family was powerful and would make the flower shop run by my mother go out of business easily. Because he was afraid. Afraid that I would tell my mother. He was afraid that my mother would know that he was bullying me. The more I thought about it, the more frightened I became, and my heart couldn't help but beat rapidly. I started to run, and the cold wind made me more sober. I have to go and ask my mother for verification. It usually takes 20 minutes. But I ran home in 10 minutes. When my mother saw me come back, she was a little surprised. You're back so early today? I was bullied by Leo every day. In order not to worry my mother, I lied that I was studying by myself at school. In order not to let my mother notice anything, every time I came home, I would pull down my long sleeves to cover the bruises on my arms. My mother came out of the kitchen wearing an apron and smiled at me. Go and wash your hands quickly. Mom will finish cooking soon. Her eyes paused on my hair for a moment. Why are your hair and clothes a little wet? An ant splashed water on the roadside and accidentally splashed it on me. Then you go and take a bath quickly. Don't catch a cold. I nodded, put down my school bag and went to the bedroom to get a change of clothes and take a bath. By the time I came out of the bath, my mother had already cooked the meal. My father was on a business trip out of town and wasn't at home during this time. I sat at the dining table, looking at my mother's gentle face, and hesitated to speak. Mom, I have a question to ask you. My mother put a chicken leg into my bowl. Eat it while it's hot. What question? I hesitated for a while, but still asked. Mom, do I have an older brother? What's his name? My mother's hand that was picking up vegetables paused, and the smile on her face froze a little. Why do you suddenly ask this? Just a little curious. My mother was silent for a long time and didn't eat much during the whole meal. Suddenly I regretted it a little. It seemed that I shouldn't have asked these questions. My mother suddenly became very unhappy. But after the meal, my mother called me to her room. She handed me a photo. His name is Leo. He is Mom's first child. I took the photo, and my hands were a little shaky. This photo was exactly the same as the one in Leo's pocket watch. Yvonne hadn't thought of that child for a long time. After all, she had long regarded herself as if she had never given birth to him. If her daughter hadn't mentioned it today, she might not have remembered it for a long time. Nor would she have remembered her first failed marriage. She should have cut her losses in time when her husband started staying out all night. But she gave in again and again, allowing that man to test her bottom line time and time again. The scent of other women's perfume began to cling to him. He would blatantly take his mistress out on trips and vacations in the name of business trips. Yvonne was disheartened. She thought that even if her husband betrayed her, the son she had risked half her life to give birth to would always stand by her side. But she was wrong. Even though she had shown Leo great patience and tenderness and given him all the love she could give, Leo still ultimately disappointed her. She heard little Leo hold that woman's hand and call her mom. He said that his mother was sloppy and annoying, and always controlled him. He said he really wanted to change to a beautiful and gentle aunt to be his mother. Since then, Yvonne had understood that Leo, like his father, was an out and outing great. She was completely disappointed in this family. When she was in the divorce lawsuit, Yvonne gave up Leo's custody and tried to get the most benefits for herself as much as possible. She even remembered how the two of them, one big and one small, reacted when she moved out of the Cheng family. The big one was relieved. The small one was overjoyed. Great! I can change my mother. Great! Those cheers were like thorns, piercing into Yvonne's heart. They were also like knives, cutting off her last bit of attachment to the son. After listening to my mother's words, I gently placed the photo on the table. Mom. I tugged at her hand. When she looked over, I slowly rolled up my sleeve, revealing large and small bruises on my arm. What happened to you? My mother grabbed my hand, and her voice changed pitch. Was it someone who hit you? I held back my full of grievances and slowly nodded. Mom. Someone at school is bullying me. Can you go to school to support me tomorrow? And next morning when I went to school, my desk mate moved his desk to the side silently when he saw me. My own desk was lying on the ground, and the books in the desk drawer were scattered all over the floor. They were all covered with dirty footprints. I silently picked up the desk and looked around. The classmates all deliberately avoided my gaze. They were isolating me. Or, they were afraid of getting involved with me and then being retaliated against by Leo. After the first class, a classmate who had a fairly good relationship with me finally couldn't help but follow me when I went to the toilet. Serafina, how on earth did you get on Leo's bad side? Rumor has it that you broke his favorite treasure. Is that true? Is he just looking for an excuse to bully you, eh? My silence was taken as an admission by her. That's too much. At the age of a teenager, when a sense of justice is at its peak. She frowned. Why don't you go to the teacher? I was stunned when I heard this. Go to the teacher? Why hadn't I? Either they would think it was just normal play among children and casually brush me off with a few perfunctory words. Or, as soon as they heard that the perpetrator was Leo, the teachers would shirk responsibility like kicking a ball around. After all, our school has an experimental building funded by the Cheng family. When it comes to Leo, it's a hot potato for them. Nobody wants to get involved. Or rather, nobody dares to. After school in the evening, I was blocked by Leo and his gang again. He had a gloomy face and seemed to be in a very bad mood. I noticed that he wasn't wearing anything around his neck. Was that pocket watch not repaired yet? So, are you here to punish me today? That classmate full of a sense of justice was still a child after all. In the face of boys several years older than us. She would also be afraid. She stood at the corner of the corridor, watching me being taken upstairs. After hesitating for a long time, she finally didn't take a step forward. She crouched there and grabbed her hair in frustration. Suddenly, a pair of high heels appeared in front of her. She looked up and saw a beautiful and gentle aunt. Hello, classmate. Are you from class 4? Have you seen my Serafina? I'm here to take her home. 5 Leo pushed me into the abandoned toilet. I tripped over a broken mop stick at the entrance and fell directly to the ground. My face scratched against several tiles piled up in the corner of the toilet. And there was an instant sharp pain. I propped myself up and sat up. And a warm touch streaked across my face. My hands were a little shaky. And I didn't dare to touch it. But Leo's reaction was even greater than mine. He crouched down to look at my face. Visibly flustered. Scratched your face. When he bullied me before, He always avoided my face. You know what to say when you get home, right? Huh? Leo grabbed my shoulders tightly with great force. Speak. You can only say that you fell by yourself. Do you hear me? I didn't pay attention to his sudden outburst. I just stared blankly and looked up at the door. Because of this accident just now, Leo's little followers were all crowded at the door looking in. So, none of them noticed when there was an extra person outside the door. I looked at my mother, who was so shocked that she hadn't made a sound for a long time, and called out in a trembling voice. Mom, it hurts. Serafina. I didn't expect that such a slender mother could also burst out with such great strength. She pushed aside the several boys in front of her, rushed straight in, and hugged me into her arms. Mom is here. Serafina. Don't be afraid. Mom is here to support you. She carefully examined the wound on my face. And her eyes were red. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should have come earlier. She was originally going to come early. It was I who stopped her. Today was the opening of a branch of her flower shop, which was a very important event. So I only asked her to pick me up from school in the evening. I huddled in my mother's arms and looked at Leo, who already had a dazed look on his face. My mother also came to her senses from the shock. She turned around angrily and glared at Leo fiercely. At the moment, when their eyes met, Leo, almost embarrassed, turned his head away. My mother also involuntarily frowned. She thought that this abominable teenager in front of her looked somewhat familiar. Leo was extremely tortured under her scrutinizing gaze. He turned around and was about to leave. But my mother stood up and grabbed his clothes. Where do you think you're going? My daughter has been beaten like this by you. Do you think you can just leave like this? Leo looked at this mother, who was almost unchanged from his memory. He opened his mouth slightly, wanting to say something. But in the end, he couldn't say a word. In his memory, his mother seemed to have also supported him so vehemently. At that time, he was only 5 years old. His mother took him to the children's park to play. He was pushed down to the ground by an older child. His mother picked him up and patiently coaxed him. Then she went to settle accounts with that child, and the child's parents in high dudgeon. He hugged his mother's neck, and his frightened heart seemed to find comfort at that moment. He thought his mother was like a heroic female warrior. She seemed invulnerable, and would never let him get hurt. But in the end, the person who hurt his mother the most was himself. He was bewitched by the beautiful sister who often took him out to play. She said that his mother, who would fight for his interests so vehemently, was not gentle or elegant and would embarrass him. She said that his mother, who only knew how to bathe and cook at home, was incompetent and useless. The beautiful sister also said that a truly good mother for him would not beat or scold him, would give him lots of candies, and would fulfill all the wishes of a child. Little Leo believed it. He thought that this beautiful sister in front of him was the best mother in the world. He didn't understand anything at that time, so he didn't understand why his mother's expression was so disappointed and sad when she left the family. He also didn't understand why the beautiful sister changed completely after becoming his mother. He thought his mother would come back. But until now, Leo finally realized. His mother couldn't come back. His mother had other children. Even when his mother stood in front of him, she couldn't recognize him. Leo remained silent all the time. Finally, my mother's loud shouts attracted the patrolling teachers. The teacher called in my head teacher and Leo's head teacher as well. Our group went to the school infirmary in a large force. The wound is not deep and doesn't need stitching. The doctor treated the wound on my face. Don't worry. It won't leave a scar. When I came out from inside, my mother was pointing at Leo's nose and scolding. Whose child is this? How has he been taught to be like this? Where are his parents? Mother stood there like a superman. Ask his parents to come here. I walked over slowly and gently held my mother's hand. I saw that Leo's gaze shifted over and stopped on the hands that my mother and I were holding tightly. Leo's head teacher stepped forward full of apologies to soothe my mother. This parent. We fully understand how you feel at the moment. But Leo's parents are really busy and can't make it here. Well, do you think we can settle this privately? A moment of blankness appeared on my mother's face. She frowned slightly, suspecting that she had misheard. So she confirmed with the teacher. What did you say his name was? Leo. The teacher let out a sigh of relief. He thought that once my mother knew he was the young master of the Chang family, she surely wouldn't be unreasonable, and choosing to settle privately with money was the wisest thing to do. So the teacher added another sentence. The Chang of the Chang group. Mother looked at Leo, and didn't move for a long time. But I could feel that her hand holding mine was shaking. Leo finally raised his eyes to look over. He and Mother were looking at each other with very complicated expressions. Mother let go of my hand. I couldn't help but feel a thump in my heart. I saw Mother slowly walk towards Leo. Her steps became faster and faster, and it could be seen that she was not in a stable mood. A faint light shone in Leo's eyes. He even subconsciously took a step forward. But the hug from Mother that he had imagined didn't come. Instead, there was a loud slap. Everyone was stunned. Mother was panting heavily, staring fixedly at Leo. In Leo's shocked eyes, she raised her hand and slapped him on the face again. The teachers finally came to their senses and rushed over with pale faces to pull her. This parent. Calm down. How can you hit a child? They were more afraid that Leo would lose his temper and hit my mother in a fit of anger. Then this matter would be even more troublesome. But unexpectedly, Leo stood there blankly, allowing my mother to scold and hit him without moving a bit. The teachers hurriedly pulled my mother away in a flurry. Leo's head teacher looked at the slap marks on his face, and his face turned pale with fright. He hurriedly asked the school doctor to bring an ice pack. Mother also calmed down. She looked at Leo expressionlessly and said almost coldly, "Hurry up and call his parents over. Otherwise, I'll call the police." The head teacher made more than a dozen phone calls, all of which were answered by Leo's father's secretary. His father was a very busy man and really didn't have time to deal with such trifles. Finally, it was Leo's mother who came. That woman was exquisite from head to toe, and her face was well maintained. She looked at most 30 years old. She took off her sunglasses and smiled at my mother. "Hello. I'm Leo's mother. Yo-Yo. 7 Yvonne." Of course. Recognized Yo-Yo. That girl who used to call her sister one after another in the past had long lost all her shyness and was full of aggressiveness. Yvonne helped Leo start a business together, helping with big and small matters. Later, the company got on its feet and life became better. Yvonne was pregnant. Leo let her rest at home, and then recruited a lot of new employees. Yo-Yo was one of them. A college student who was still in college. She often followed Yvonne, would patiently take a notebook to write down her words. Under Yvonne's guidance, she would handle the company-related affairs in an orderly manner. After graduating from college, Yo-Yo naturally entered Leo's company and became his secretary. Until then, Yvonne still regarded this girl as a sister. She often invited her to have dinner at home. When Leo was 3 years old, Yvonne finally noticed something strange. She found that there was occasionally the smell of women's perfume on her husband, and that her husband was on business trips more and more frequently. And every time, he had to take Yo-Yo with him. She was not stupid. After a little investigation, their affair was exposed. Yvonne had thought about getting a divorce long ago, but Leo was too young. She couldn't bear it. During countless sleepless nights, she convinced herself to endure this marriage in name only. She thought she could endure it for the sake of the child. Until Leo grew up a little, Yvonne found that the child she cared about had long been attracted by Yo-Yo. This made her feel betrayed. Betrayed by her husband. Betrayed by her son. And also betrayed by Yo-Yo, whom she had originally treated as a sister. So she didn't hesitate anymore and chose to leave. Yo-Yo also obviously recognized Yvonne. She was stunned for a moment. And then there was a proud smile on the corner of her mouth. "Long time no see. Akun." They were talking inside. Leo and I were sent away. I noticed that when Leo looked at that Yo-Yo, There was a flash of disgust on his face. We stood in the corridor and neither of us said a word. Finally, he was the first to speak. You are very proud. Right? Proud of what? I blinked my eyes and looked at him with some confusion. You fucking deliberately let her come and see. Stop pretending. Leo didn't dare to be too loud and growled in a low voice. Serafina. Don't be complacent. I looked at him somewhat amused. Lie. So you're jealous that I have a great mother? Watching his face getting darker and darker, I laughed even more happily. Of course I'm jealous. My mother is so good to me. She will cook very delicious meals for me, coax me to sleep, take me on trips, and make flower bouquets for me with her own hands. Stop it. Leo glared at me with red eyes. She used to be like this to me too. Do you think you're unique? Then how did you lose her? I asked him rhetorically. For such a long time. You didn't even dare to call her mom. Why are you barking at me like a dog in front of me? You. Leo was extremely angry and his face turned red. But he didn't dare to lay a hand on me because my mother could see me standing outside from the office. So I'm not afraid of him now. I have someone to back me up. I looked straight at him. I was wrong. It wasn't you who lost her. It was she who didn't want you anymore. Leo's eyes were completely red. And at the moment when I said the last sentence, a tear actually welled up in his eyes. I was a little shocked. Leo quickly turned his head away and wiped it with his hand. A teacher who had been observing secretly saw that the atmosphere was not right and hurriedly ran over. He coaxed and dragged Leo into another office. Mom and that woman didn't talk for long in the office and then came out. Mom walked straight over and took my hand. Let's go home. I didn't know the result of their talk, but I believed that my mother wouldn't let me suffer losses. When we arrived at the school parking lot, our car was blocked by a van and couldn't get out for a while. Mom called the contact number on the van to notify the owner to move the car. During the waiting process, we then noticed that parked next to us was a luxury car, and the driver was also squatting not far away, smoking and making a phone call. His voice was quite loud. I'm at school. What else could it be for? Young Master Chang has caused trouble again. To be honest, he might as well pretend to be well behaved. Then he wouldn't make Mr. Chang dislike him and make his wife angry so often. Young Master Second is better at pleasing Mr. Chang than him. There's probably no chance for him in the company. If he was obedient, he could still have a worry-free life for a lifetime. But unfortunately, he's a troublemaker. The driver was talking about his employer's family affairs with great relish. The young Master Chang in his mouth should be Leo. It seems that he's not as glorious as he appears on the surface. His father doesn't love him. His mother doesn't care about him. And he has a younger brother competing with him for family property. So now he wants to come back to seek warmth from his biological mother, and also vent his anger on me by the way. He deserves it. I glanced at my mother beside me. She seemed as if she hadn't heard what the driver said. And her expression didn't change. The van driver was nearby and came to move the car within a few minutes. I sat in the passenger seat and saw Leo following that woman out of the teaching building. Mom drove past them without taking a second look. The atmosphere in the car was also very strange. I looked at my mother through the rearview mirror, and then couldn't help but look again. Mom smiled. Just say what you want to say. Mom, I asked in a low voice. How did you feel when you saw Leo today? Nothing. Mom sighed. To be honest, I didn't expect that I could face him so calmly myself. Probably because the pain he once brought me has been soothed by you. So I don't feel anything because I really don't care anymore. But he can't bully you. If he bullies you, Mom will be angry. If you are bullied again in the future, you must come back and tell me. At worst, we'll transfer schools. Mom reached out and patted the back of my hand. Don't overthink either. Mom only has you as a child now. You are Mom's only precious one. I stared at her blankly. My eyes were sore. At the same time, I was also mocking Leo in my heart. For someone you don't cherish, There won't be so many chances for you to win them back. My mother. I will cherish her very much. 9. Leo apologized to me in public in front of all the teachers and students in the school on that day. The school also installed cameras everywhere in the teaching building and began to combat campus bullying. The Chang family gave me corresponding compensation. And Leo was ordered to suspend school for half a semester. His family is the school's sponsor. So they won't let him drop out anyway. Mom has explained to me whether this punishment is too light. Originally, I wanted to call the police directly. But he is your half-brother. Mom is afraid that if he has a criminal record, it will affect your future civil service examination. All right. I can accept this explanation. After all, our province is a big province for civil service examinations. And there are indeed such concerns. As long as Leo doesn't come to provoke me again in the future, I can reluctantly accept this result as well. But a week later, I still saw Leo at school. He was wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt and jeans, standing in front of our class. When he saw me coming, he swayed towards me. I stopped and looked at him warily, ready to run at any time. But Leo was contrary to his usual self. He walked up to me and stretched his hand, which had been behind his back all the time, in front of me. Here. For you. It is a delicate small cake. I looked at him coldly. Trying to poison me? No poison. I just simply want you to have it. He stood nonchalantly. Haven't I already apologized to you? Don't be so petty. Petty? He was a bully. Yet he had the nerve to say that I, the one being bullied, was petty. I had been bullied by them for such a long time and still had a lot of scars on my body. I wasn't so magnanimous as to forgive him easily. I raised my hand and threw the small cake he handed over into the trash can beside me. Then bypassed him, and entered the classroom. Leo stood outside the classroom, and looked at me for a long time. Finally, he did nothing and just walked away. I frowned and glanced out of the window. He was a bit strange. Although Leo was on leave of absence at home, this couldn't stop him from coming to school. Since that day, he came to school every day, and would bring me all kinds of things. Food, toys, and daily necessities. I couldn't figure out what he wanted to do. All the things he sent could only be handed over intact to his homeroom teacher by me, leaving him to deal with them. After all, I didn't want to have any involvement with him. When I met Leo outside the class again, I finally couldn't help but say what was on my mind. Do you want to repair your relationship with my mother by pleasing me? Dream on. I looked at him expressionlessly. Don't come to bother me anymore in the future. I hate you. And my mother doesn't want to see you again either. Leo's slovenly look finally changed. His lips tightened, and the hatred in his eyes when looking at me could no longer be hidden. See? I knew it. He approached me with ill intentions. Since that day, I haven't seen him at school again. At the end of the semester, the school organized a summer camp. I really wanted to go, but I was afraid of meeting Leo. My classmate comforted me. It's okay. In the past, it was mostly junior high school students who participated in the summer camp. Besides, Leo is on leave of absence at home. He probably isn't qualified to participate in this activity, right? I thought about it, and thought she was right. So I submitted my application form. But neither of us expected it. In previous years, the activity funds for the school's summer camp were sponsored by the Chang family. And this year was no exception. So Leo didn't need any conditions to participate in the summer camp, nor was he restricted by any conditions. When we arrived at the destination of the summer camp, I saw Leo already sitting in the tent. I immediately froze on the spot. And my hands even felt a bit cold. Having been bullied by him for too long, I felt that I had some PTSD. My classmate stood beside me. It's okay. There are so many of us together. He doesn't dare to bully you so blatantly. Leo also saw me. He waved at me and was still smiling. I took it as his provoking and irritating me. So I chose to stay out of sight and picked a campsite farthest from him early on. On the first day at the campsite, Something happened on my side. My tent had been rummaged through. My watch and mobile phone were not lost. The only thing missing was the boxed meal prepared by my mother for me. Because I was afraid that it would go bad in the hot weather. There was only enough for today. For the rest of the time, we would cook by ourselves at the campsite. I looked at the empty lunchbox bag. A bit dazed. The classmates who came over after hearing the news were also puzzled. No. Who on earth would only steal a boxed meal? After the shock, I calmed down. Looking at this so-called crime scene, I could probably guess who the suspect was. When I found Leo's tent, he had already finished the last bite of the box meal. Leo, have you no shame? I rushed over and snatched the lunchbox in front of him. He had eaten it very cleanly, not leaving a single grain of rice. Leo burped and took out 200 yuan and handed it to me. Here. Compensation for you. I raised my hand and knocked away his money, glaring at him. Who wants your money? This was the meal made by my mother. Can it be bought with money? Leo, you don't have a mother to cook for you. But I do. Don't come and snatch mine. Leo was originally smiling as he bent down to pick up the money. After hearing my words, his movement paused. When he looked up again, there was no smile on his face. Isn't it just a meal? Is it that serious? Yes. I looked at him. I won't allow you to snatch any of my things. Not the boxed meal. And definitely not my mother. But it should all have been mine originally. Leo kicked over a stool beside him, and the whole person became irritable. I haven't eaten the food she made for 10 years. What's wrong with me having one meal? I go to her flower shop to see her every day. But she turns a blind eye. I call and send messages to her. And the next second I'm blocked. Leo staggered and squatted on the ground. Just because of a little mistake I made when I was young and ignorant. She has punished me for so many years. Why? I was a bit surprised. I didn't know that he had also been trying to contact my mother privately all this time. He thought he was pitiful. But I didn't think so. You regret it now because you're not having a good life. I cruelly pierced through his disguise. If you were having a good life, you wouldn't think of her. After all, you're still selfish. The boxed meal incident just ended like this. I didn't expect Leo to be well behaved and stop causing trouble next. I just hoped that he could bother me less. The location of our summer camp was Songrong Mountain. In the afternoon, a mountain climbing activity would be held. We would draw lots in groups of several people, and take different routes to compete in climbing the mountain. Each team would be led by a teacher to ensure safety. When I set off with the group, it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The mountain was not steep, but the journey was quite long. I didn't have lunch, so I got a little tired as I walked. I took a break at a signpost. In order not to affect the progress of the whole team, I told them to go ahead first. And then I would catch up at a faster pace later. There were a lot of signposts guiding the direction throughout the journey. And this was already a well-established scenic spot with quite a few staff members. The teacher didn't hesitate for too long and agreed. After they left, I rested in place for a while and then caught up with my backpack on my back. But somehow, the more I walked, the more I felt something was wrong. There were more and more trees. And the bushes also became disorderly. I felt that I had gone the wrong way and hurriedly wanted to turn back. But I could no longer find the direction I had come from. I panicked all of a sudden. When I took out my mobile phone to contact the leading teacher, I found that there was no signal at all in this dense forest. Is there anyone? I shouted loudly. But all I could hear was my own echo. I could only walk step by step in the direction I had come from by instinct. 12 I used all my strength, but still couldn't get out of this dense forest. Also, because I was startled by a passing squirrel, I fell and sprained my ankle, which swelled up. I sat on an old tree root and silently waited for rescue. But I didn't expect that the first person to come looking for me would be Leo. He looked in a mess. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. Ha 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 ha. I found you. I didn't feel happy. but rather frightened. For me, meeting Leo was not much different from meeting a wild beast. There was no one around here. If he wanted to do something to me, no one could stop him. I couldn't even run away. I looked at him warily and staggered back step by step. What do you want? Leo quickly came to me in a few steps. He looked at my leg and slightly raised his eyebrows. Injured? None of your business. Leo was silent for a few seconds, and then took another step towards me. Just as I was about to pick up the wooden stick at my feet to defend myself, I saw him squat down in front of me. What are you doing? His voice was a little impatient. It's almost dark and you can't see? Come on. I'll carry you out. I was a little surprised and didn't move for a while. But Leo grabbed my arm with one hand, dragged me onto his back, and carried me on his back with a little effort. I was so frightened, and that I began to struggle. What are you wriggling about? He slapped me on the arm. Move again and I'll throw you down and make your other leg lame too. Threatened by him. I didn't move anymore. My body stiffly lay on his back. Leo carried me and walked out step by step. My thoughts were a little chaotic. I didn't know what on earth he wanted to do. Many plants in the dense forest were thorny, and Leo had a lot of cuts on his exposed arms and legs. I thought to myself, what was he after? Why did he endure the pain to carry me? His enemy. Out? Soon. My question was answered. When we walked out of the dense forest, the teachers quickly gathered around. Sarafina. We were not thoughtful about this. The signpost was blown askew by the wind. Which made you get lost. Quick. Quick. Let's go to the hospital for a checkup. Leo, who also looked in a mess, went with me. After a checkup at the hospital, the doctor said that my leg was broken. Before the nurse pushed me to get a cast, I saw my mother also came after hearing the news. She ran nervously to me. Sarafina, how are you? Are you injured? It's okay. Mom, I just had a fall. I comforted her with a smile. The nurse pushed me to get a cast. Before leaving, I saw my mother breathe a sigh of relief. Then she asked the accompanying teacher where Leo was. Leo had achieved his purpose. My mother was willing to go and see him. 13. When Yvonne entered the ward, Leo's wounds, big and small, had already been treated. He looked rather funny as a whole and was sitting on the bed playing with his mobile phone. Hearing the door open, he looked up and then froze. Yvonne closed the door and walked up to him. Leo called out in disbelief, Mom? Yvonne sighed. Student Cheng. I heard that you rescued my daughter? Hearing Yvonne's address, Leo's face suddenly turned pale. You bullied my daughter before. I will never forgive you for this. But to be fair, today I should thank you for rescuing my daughter. Leo frowned and asked her in a trembling voice, Mom, do you really not recognize me anymore? I already know I was wrong. Leo got up from the bed a little excitedly. He quickly walked up to Yvonne and, before she could react, suddenly knelt in front of her and hugged her waist. Mom, I really know I was wrong. I hurt your heart before. I was ignorant and young. You can scold me or beat me, but don't disown me. Yvonne looked at the boy kneeling in front of her, and her emotions were also very complicated. She sighed and bent down to slowly push him away. Leo, I'm very happy now. Her voice was soft, but every word seemed to leave an imprint on Leo's heart. I have a husband who loves me and a lovely and filial daughter. They are very nice and treat me very well. I'm very satisfied with my current life, so I don't want anyone to disrupt or disturb it. Hearing this, Leo fell to the ground. He realized that to his mother, he was a variable, a trouble. Yvonne looked at him and said, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. And I don't want to have anything to do with your Cheng family either. Leo, some things, once lost and missed, can never be retrieved. You have to look forward. Before leaving, Yvonne, looking at the still dazed young man, finally couldn't help but give him a reminder and advice. Since you are the son of the Cheng family, You should think about your own future. Sometimes showing appropriate weakness can strive for the greatest benefit for yourself. The misfortunes you think are actually all caused by your father. He was unfaithful in marriage. But then he hid away nicely. The person you should vent your dissatisfaction on is him. Not my daughter. In the future, don't bother her anymore. 14. I was picked up and taken home by my mother. Then I was forced to eat stewed pork bones for several days. After resting at home for almost a week, I was almost suffocated. So I went to school on crutches. As soon as I entered the classroom, some classmates came to help me. They sent me to my seat, and then began to ask me for gossip. Have you heard? Leo has gone to study abroad. Is it dropping out? Oh, almost. The Chang family donated so much money to the school. But Leo's still left. Sarafina. Who is your mother? She is so awesome. Looking at their expectant eyes, I took out a business card from my bag. My mother is the chief florist in Serafina Flower Shop. She is very capable. If you are interested, welcome to visit. Since then, I have never seen Leo again. I successfully completed junior high school and performed stably in the college entrance examination, and was admitted to the university I was satisfied with. On the day when I left home to go to school in a strange city, my mother and father came to see me off at the airport together. My father is a very ordinary programmer. He has an ordinary family background, an ordinary appearance and an ordinary personality. But his love for my mother and me is not ordinary at all. My mother handed me the flowers in her hand. I wrapped them up early in the morning. I wish my daughter a bright future. I held the flowers, turned around and waved to them, and then ran towards my future. 15. Extra story. When I went back during the summer vacation of my junior year, I went to help in my mother's flower shop. I don't have as good an aesthetic sense as my mother, so I can only help wake up the flowers and process the orders. One evening, the flower shop was about to close, but there was still a bouquet of flowers that hadn't been picked up. I looked at the order curiously. There was no name or phone number left. My mother had just gone out. So I asked the old employee who was still helping in the store. She looked at the flowers and suddenly realized, "You mean this bouquet? It's okay. Just leave it there." Every year at this time, a mysterious person comes to order flowers and always requires lilies as the main flower material. After it is made, no one comes to pick it up. So it is just left here. She muttered in a low voice, "But he pays the money very quickly. Otherwise, we would think he was deliberately skipping the bill." Lilies. I was stunned for a moment and subconsciously asked, "What is the flower language of lilies?" The clerk thought for a while and replied, "Sincere apology and pure heart." While talking, my mother came back from outside. I walked over. "Mom, what did you buy?" My mother handed me the bag in her hand. "Your favorite flower-flavored cakes." I hugged her tightly and kissed her on the face without hesitation. My mother is still the best to me. "Oh, you are such a grown-up. Don't be so mushy." The clerk laughed beside. "Boss, you have such a good relationship with your daughter." It was almost dark and the flower shop was about to close for the day. I accompanied my mother to finally pack up things and leave. Before going out, I pointed to the lily bouquet on the table and asked strangely, "Mom, aren't you taking this flower home?" My mother turned to look at the bouquet, smiled and shook her head. "No. There are already flowers at home."